Anyone and everyone to Doglin Tales, podcast where we talk about D&D in depth. Um, let's start with the top there, unless you want me to do the intro first. Do you want me to do the intro, set the standard here?
Sure, go ahead.
All right. Hello, I'm Gats. I am the GM for Band of the Ancients D&D, a live game that we stream every Saturday. Whoa, Two Hands is on his side
Oh,
again.
awesome. That was cool.
That was just like,
Sorry,
what is
that
that?
dude.
You're good. You're good. You're
Why
good.
am I on my side?
But yeah, dungeon master, player, lover of D&D, and happy to be here and chatting with all y'all. And who else is here about Two Hands rotates back sideways?
Hello, everyone. My online handle is Eludria, which starts with an A, so I typically introduce myself first. I stream Heroes of Old, D&D, starting tomorrow.
Woo!
Excited to be
Yeah.
here. Love the topic for tonight. Glad to have you here.
Hello, I'm Charlotte. I've been playing for like a year and a half now, since last February. But I've always enjoyed TTRPGs and RPG games in general. Very happy to be here and excited to have a conversation with everybody here. Welcome.
I guess it's me next. Hello, I'm Joe. I am a player in Band of the Ancients, and I will also be a player come tomorrow in Heroes of Old.
Oh.
I have been playing for about 6 years, playing and GMing. So I feel like I'm going to enjoy the topic for today.
Hey, I'm Two Hands. My life is a hot mess, and I was sideways for a little bit, but I've recovered strongly. I'm back. Been playing D&D for a couple years, GMing for a couple years. You know the drill there, back and forth. And been with this group for about a year, loving it, over a year now. Played in Heroes of Old, played in Band of the Ancients, have my own little Rodinia campaign that they got a little taste of, and have played in Joe's campaigns as well before. And yeah, pretty sure if there was something else to mention, I forgot it, so gonna hand it off to whoever's next.
Yeah. So tonight we're gonna try and touch on the kind of theme of pets in D&D. Pets being anything from familiars to bestial or monstrous companions, some humanoid NPCs perhaps, anything and everything under that. So I know, Joe, you had a story you wanted to spin off with. Are you down to share that now by chance?
It's not something we can spin off with, but sure I can tell it.
Yeah, let's go. Let's see how it goes.
Is that a challenge?
So, in one of my more recent campaigns, I'm running Curse of Strahd. In the bit leading up to it, this is not the one that Two Hands had played in. This is a redo with a couple other people. The players had actually requested for an NPC that might be able to help them in combat, a little bit of healing. But they were also trying to find something for one of the players' partners to play, because they couldn't sit still. They couldn't really focus all that much. So they figured having like an NPC that they could roll for would help them out a little bit. They wouldn't have to role play as much. They would just roll the dice. And so we came up with this idea. The partner in question, they were very much into Squishmallows. In one of the ones that they have, they called Green Bean, I think is what it was called. And so we created this character that is Green Bean, who is a trickery domain cleric. Very limited spells, very limited abilities. However, was very much an entity of chaos within the party, and I only had it in there for one session, and the players loved it. The high-pitched voice of the character, everybody was completely unsettled. The laughter from the character it set some of them running, to say the least. But eventually that character evolved from just one domain cleric into a multi-personality entity that just kind of followed the party around. And eventually the players themselves, they were both unsettled but also very welcoming of the I guess pet to set the theme.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't entirely human, it wasn't entirely a monster, it was just an amorphous thing.
So just to make sure I got you right, it was a GM voiced and acted NPC healbot that was rolled dice-wise by a player who couldn't sit still. And
Yes.
it was just an amorphous green blob.
Mhm.
That
For
definitely sounds like a pet.
one of its personalities.
Nice.
Because how I was doing it, every session I would roll a d4. And depending on what I got on the d4, it would have a different personality, and a different domain, and a different spell list.
Cool.
And the players love that bit of randomness.
So did that other player just roll, or did they also like say, I want to do this or that, or is it literally just your time to roll, come roll dice?
Yeah, they also didn't really sit at the table.
Okay.
The
Alright.
one of the players would be like, "Babe, come roll the dice." It's like it's your turn. Because she'd be back in her room playing I think it was The Sims, I think they were playing at the time.
Alright.
I mean, that
Yeah.
brings up an interesting question for me, which is something I was hoping to chat about tonight, is like, when you introduce a quote unquote pet to the party, whether it's a familiar that's not from the Find a Familiar spell, right? Or
Yep.
some critter companion that's following them around, or some NPC you hired or manipulated or found and saved. That level of control between the GM and maybe one player responded to, or the whole party, there's a lot of pros and cons with different setups with that. And I know Two Hands got an interesting dose having GM'd 3 Beastmasters who were playing, Beastmaster for Matt Colville's latest player class and subclass. How did you feel about managing 3 companions at once for Rodinian?
I'm pretty sure I led in with I'm probably gonna hate this, but I'll do it because I love you guys. I think mechanically I wasn't far off of my initial mark. I had a good time as a GM. I have this weird thing about pets. I think they just complicate the game for me as a GM, and I'm like, oh my god, I gotta remember Bushy the snail, and I gotta make sure that he has a chance to interact with the environment, and it's just should I let the character, the player manipulate Bushy, or should I just make Bushy do some cool stuff autonomy, player autonomy. So I quickly just delve into madness with just how much I should think about or not think about the pets, and whether or not the players should be using them, or whether I should be doing them. And I think it spins off a whole lot of questions, and ultimately it's down to how you want to manage your universe and who your players are. And I'm blessed with having some really awesome players in that campaign, and they tend to do what they want to do in the game, which is 3 out of the 4 people here that I'm on the podcast with. But I think that mechanically, I think that Coville knew that this class is a little wonky when they let in the first 5 pages. Yeah, you see, this is really only built for one of these guys in a party, in a veteran party. It just it throws the vibe off. They kind of gloss over it with some but really I think really changed the dynamic. I would even say that it changed some CR calculations as well. I could throw a lot crazier stuff at them, and they would survive even with being respectful to the lives of their pets. We did this thing where if the pets died, something would happen that they wouldn't know, and if their pet kept dying, then something continually worse would continue to happen to their pet or to the connection between them and their pet. And so they were like, "Oh, I can't let our pets die." But even being conservative with their pets' lives and not using them as fodder, the old respawn trick in old FPS games when you're playing co-op, it was still they could handle a lot of shit. But I think that was a good discovery of the source material, and I think that after a while they're like, "Oh, our pets are stepping on each other's toes. Maybe we should branch out and pursue different classes, subclasses, and party compositions." But I think that was cool. Like, that's probably not going to happen again in our group, three Beastmasters. So, like, I'm glad we got a chance to see how it actually would be. It was a beautiful disaster, and I loved it, and we had a lot of fun, and they actually did a lot of great things with their pets, and yeah, they had some cool stories from that. So yeah, interesting times. If you don't like pets in your game, maybe think twice before doing the triple Beastmaster, but it's definitely going to be memorable, no matter what.
Memorable's a good word for it.
Yeah. At least we gave you some variety. Like we had the flying
Oh,
dragon,
yeah.
we had the raptor that Joe was playing, and then the earth elemental that Ali was playing, which got so out of hand so fast.
I loved Marv, okay?
Everyone loved Barb.
Everyone
The
did love
holy
Mark.
altar infused earth elemental, folks.
Yes.
Yeah,
he
the
was,
walking sacrilege.
Yeah.
I think pets are a really great way to like bring out additional facets of people's personalities. There's certain things about people that can get almost paywalled and locked behind interacting with certain creatures around them. I mean, I've seen some players actually interact with the game better, VGMing through their pet by like me giving them a pet. They instantly become more participating in the party and just interact more. And I think that there's something there. Maybe it's hey, this isn't as nerve wracking as talking with other player characters or NPCs. Like, I can interact with my pet, and then that basically gives a free canvas for others to interact with me. And they kind of like side slide into that interaction and that role play using the pet as a stepping ground, as a stepping stool. So I think from a GM perspective, if you've got people that are maybe like more introverted or just have a harder time meshing with the group, that's something to consider too.
Mm-hmm. That's the pet use, I like to call the comfort critter, right? And it can really change the way a group plays. I know in an earlier season of Bane of the Ancients, it was like I think it was season 1 when I did that to Alu and the other players we had. There was some kind of like just tension, this kind of like, how do I talk to other NPCs? How do I talk player to player? And so I introduced this opportunity to find a Mogwai. Actually, in a cave they were exploring, there was a den of Mogwai, and they ended up taking the Mogwai out of the cave with them. Long story short, but that kind of fuzzy, nice, like non-threatening, isn't going to hurt you, is your buddy creature really helped like give a pivot point for like just opening up as a character. Maybe they weren't comfortable talking to another PC or an NPC, but they could go like in the corner and talk to their Mogwai for 5 minutes. And then it's also like a common, some common ground that the players can all come together around. Like, we all love our little critter. Doesn't even have to do anything in combat ever, but even just that like little pet that you guys can all hang out with. And yeah, I want to feed my Mogwai some of this fish that I just caught, and just have this little scene, and then sparks into some campfire talk and things like that. I found it really good. And then, if you want to be an evil GM like me, you can torture the party with said Mogwai creature down the road and have an epic Dragonheart music scene when it dies in a cave. YouTube muted that scene because of the song, but it fit.
Too
We,
soon.
dude, it's been like 5 years since
That
we did
just means
that.
they watched the stream.
That's
Too
true.
soon.
I guess, unless anybody else wants to take the mic from me, Alu, you got to experience me doing that.
That's true.
I'm
And
curious, like, you
well,
know,
I mean, there are so many ways I could expand on that, right? Because my all-time favorite class is Beastmaster Ranger. I am a sucker for having animal companions. I don't know, something just stuck about way back in the day, playing WoW, way before I probably should have been allowed to. Night Elf Hunter got me Cat Companion. There's just something really grounding about ha- having something you can rely on, in a sense, whether it be, that comfort pet you were talking about, something you can turn to during a stressful moment, therapy dog esque pets, or even just, another counter to yourself, like strength in numbers, having an animal companion that can interact in melee or that you can kind of bounce things off of. Like there's a degree of empowerment in having those, whether it be just comfortability, feeling just kind of like more powerful because you know this animal has your back. Um, I think there's really a lot to that, and in terms of losing them, right? Like it's a very different dynamic than say how you'd interact with an NPC that's neutral to you, or how you'd interact with like another player. Like you're not gonna treat another player as your pet. I mean, you might, but that's that's a dynamic that you two got to work out there. Um, and I don't know. I guess the concept of a GM, targeting that pet, it it goes both ways. It can be this like great thing to turn to in terms of comfort, in terms of reliability. And then when, that's taken away, it's like, all right, fighter, you've spent the first year and a half of our campaign getting enough gold for plate mail. You're naked in a jail cell. It's gone. Oh goodness. But yeah, I don't know. I still don't know how I feel about losing an animal companion. I feel it should be something significant. It's a part of your life. It's a part of your character. It's losing a part of who they are, right? Another living being. Like losing an arm, their lives not going to be the same. And D&D has magic where you can bring them back or just kind of like snap your fingers and everything is fine because, losing a pet sucks a lot. But I appreciate your take of like, some things you're either not going to get back or two hands, even with you. All playing Beastmasters, I apologize.
It's fun.
Just making it so there's some consequences to, losing him. Like you can bring him back, they are tethered to you through magic, but it's not going to be the same. It's going to leave a scar. Just like if you're stabbed, if you're cut, if you're maimed, that's going to leave a scar. And I think it makes things more memorable. Rather than just, another pool of hit points, another off attack on your bonus action. Like I've never been the biggest fan of just, I don't know, just padding your own combat abilities. If you want to do that, there's better ways to go about it, but I don't know.
So, kind of, I guess what we've been talking about is like pets recently,
Yeah.
and something I'm a little more interested in kind of talking about along the same vein as familiars. Because in my mind, like pets and familiars are similar, but kind of also separate things. Because I feel like there's things you can do with familiars that you can't exactly do with pets. And from my experience, so I'll be upfront about it. I haven't actually really played in very many games where there have been quote unquote pets. The one time I did, it was like a text-based campaign. Another player, they were a ranger, and they had a falcon. But otherwise, I haven't really played much with animals because I also personally, like to Hans's point, I'm not super interested in like having to manage the mechanics of having an animal, and also having an additional like relationship. I shouldn't say the relationship to manage, but like another thing to worry about because it feels like there's already a lot to be kind of focused on. So I guess like, what's your take on that, guys? Like pets versus familiars? Are they the same? Are they not? Like, what can we do with familiars that we can't do with pets? Is the relationship different? Because
Sending them
familiars
into
are
the
often-
grinder.
Those I feel more comfortable sending into the
Yeah.
Those
No.
are, you know,
Fair. Okay.
they are the way that it's flavored in D&D is they're not necessarily living, breathing beings for the most part. It's usually like a magical manifestation.
I want to put one clarification. So using the spell find familiar, because there's multiple ways to get familiars in D&D, but we're talking about I cast find familiar as a ritual. My critter comes out. Sorry, I interrupted, but continue. Because there's the other ones that are familiar by choice. Those are very different creatures.
Okay, so for those, there might be some moral quandaries.
I'm talking about like in season 5, whatever your character's familiar was, Allie. I can't
Yolmi?
remember.
Yolmi.
Yeah, I love Yolmi.
She
So
kind of got the
Yolmi,
grinder treatment.
Yeah.
did.
well, I mean, kind of.
Alu did not abuse Yolmi. It's one thing. Like Yomi's a great example of a critter,
Let
a
the record
companion
show.
critter, right? So the way that I handled that as a GM for Alu is I gave this. It was a familiar. Pact of the Chain Warlock was the idea down the road, so we wanted this familiar to be more interesting, less malleable, right? And very themed to their character. So we went with this celestial, fey, trickery fairy that's always invisible and doing all kinds of shenanigans. But I mean, throughout the game, the primary function of this fairy familiar Yolmi was just to have NPC interaction. Like, it was just a silly method of causing chaos to initiate dialogue between you guys as player characters. As far as, like, mechanically, you very seldom... Like, you were worried about Yolmi. You even left her behind many times. You're like, I know I can bring you back, Yolmi, but... Why don't you stay in the car while we go deal with this? You know? And then I would have Yolmi in the background creating all kinds of chaos. Spreading rumors was their favorite thing.
Can confirm.
But yeah, Alu, why don't you talk about a bit how Yolmi like how did that familiar feel to you? Like,
Yeah, so that is a lovely example of less of a magically conjured familiar and one that you made a bond with, you know, an entity out in the world that you've basically made a magical pact with. And so, you know, in essence, it was a magically contracted NPC tied in theme to my character, but at its core was still an NPC of sorts. And with that, there is the idea that like they should be treated fairly, respectfully, maybe not as an equal per se, but like you take care of the things that you love. So that way they last and they will take care of you in return. Right?
I mean, it's like
She didn't.
the core of Pokemon right there, right? Just like that's the entire
Yes.
premise of that franchise, which I love Pokemon. Especially
No,
the old
actually, you
Pokemans.
right.
You know, like you get out of your creature what you put into it, right? You give it love, respect, nourishment, and all that. Then it's gonna take that bullet for you, or actually do what you ask it to do, maybe. But
Dang it, Charizard.
but
Mm.
I mean, like with Yomi, we put story behind it, but mechanically, you just bring her right back, right?
Oh, yeah, no,
Yeah,
absolutely.
she went pop several times, in fact, just gone, right?
Yeah.
But it's weird. Like, it almost seemed like most of the time, your character and you as a player, like, really didn't want that to happen. And it wasn't just the 1 hour ritual or whatever you had to cast to bring her back.
Well, I mean, something that helps is whenever she would be brought back from the dead, like, it would tell us all about it.
That's true.
How painful it was. How
Do
indebted
nothing
I
but
am.
cry and want nothing but cookies and sweets until they're no
Exactly.
longer crying.
Yeah, it's one of those things of like, sure, you might be immortal, but you don't need to impale yourself every 5 minutes. It's probably not a pleasant experience, and honestly, it's not. It gets inconvenient after a while. It's just not good. Like, it's because your buddy is a werewolf and he technically won't die from pushing him off a cliff. You don't. You probably shouldn't push him off a cliff. Like,
Ah.
unless it
Ah.
unless it really is a good idea. You never know. Might land on the bad guy. But
land on the bed. Yeah, we had a couple moments like that with Yomi, but yeah, I am of the belief that life say life is precious and then proceed to ransack and murder an entire village. Life that my character has deemed important and cares about is important. Valuable.
I mean that kind of brings up a point that I always like to prod at in Bay of the Ancients is like giving a moral pivot or poking a moral question, right? And that's one reason I really like companion critters of various types, whether they're some random mercenary guy outside a bar you guys turned into your fanboy who was your friend forever, or whether it's some strange winged cat thing that took a liking to your party because of moral choices. I mean, you could even call the sentient map that Joe's character just got him about a companion critter. You know, it's something with. Uh, it's going to cause moral questions. It's there. I mean, we haven't seen very much of it. You've had one conversation as you attuned, but it's akin to a familiar almost. You know, the type of relationship you might have with it. Maybe something akin to what oh gosh, what was your character's name? Alu in season 5. Can't remember.
You're talking about Melvane, right?
Oh.
No, that was season 4.
No,
Okay.
no. I know who you're.
Asa.
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 Yeah.
Yes.
Asa?
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
Asa. You know, it might end up being akin to like
That was
Asa and
season
Yolmi
3. That's
with Valis and this map. Exodus,
I hope
aka
it's
Trek.
not. Please.
Oh no, what I mean is
Oh no, it's fine. Yeah.
what I mean is
Oh, Jets. I fully accept that you're gonna fuck my shit up with this Trek map
Oh,
thing.
come on. Yolmi didn't do anything that bad. But
Adored Yomi.
presenting a critter or a sentient item or whatever it is, right? As a kind of moral question. I find it really interesting how the party can end up caring so much about this creature just due to its proximity, not only in space, but emotionally. Whether it's a comfort anchor or it's just, no, that's my buddy. I will be sad if my buddy's gone. And then presenting them with like a mirror of their own party, someone else with their own critter, and the party just like snipe. Take that bird out of the sky. And it's really interesting from a GM perspective watching the party like navigate that through combat, or even if they like pick up on it at all later. I don't know. I always have fun with that kind of stuff. Let's see. Oh, I had a question for Two Hands. He stepped away for the moment, but he will be back. As far as, but yeah, going back to what you were saying, Charlotte, just the classic familiar, right? Most of the time, as a player, the way I've encountered these familiars, or the way I've been encouraged to play them in other games when I've had them, is really just like that kind of mechanical tool. That's usually how I've run into that. Just kind of like not viewing it as something with consciousness or will or feelings or that can feel pain. Um, most of the games I played in, it's really, yeah, my familiar hovers around the thing that I'm attacking, using its health action to give me advantage, and I shoot it or hit it with a sword. Um, my familiar
Ooh.
goes invisible and spies for me. And that's usually the extent of the interaction that I encounter most of the time. I almost no GMs that I have played with has taken a familiar and given it much depth beyond, yeah, it's your raven, yeah, it's your imp. And I guess like
Why?
it feels like a really big missed opportunity for me, right?
Mhm.
But
For sure, yeah.
on the GM side, I could get something like two I was bringing up. It's a lot of work to give a familiar a personality, like a lot.
Yes.
Um, you're essentially creating another in-depth NPC to manage. And the nice thing about the Find Familiar spell, whether you're playing Theater Mind or in some virtual tabletop or on a desk, players control that familiar, so you don't have to worry about that. Unless they say, yeah, go send them 3 miles away to to see if the village war in the village, right? Then you're like, okay, I gotta do a couple rolls. But for the most part, when they're just casting Find Familiar, I think most players classically expect, at least in 5e, for this just to be like a drone that they fly around.
Right. Yeah.
Welcome back to hands.
We're good.
Yay. Did you save your cheesecake?
The alarm was beeping when I got down there, so I have no clue how far I was off on the timer,
Oh
but
no.
it was just cooked.
Mm.
I'm like, all right. I'm a degree off. It'll finish when I pull it out. So
Yeah. So we were just chatting about basically familiars, like the classic find familiar, spell familiars, rather than, like a GM companion creature or familiar you find in the game or something like that. I had a question for you, but I forgot what it is now. But yeah, like, Charlie, was there any other stuff you were thinking about regarding just like the familiar versus something with more depth or more personality?
No, because again, I haven't really encountered them a whole
Hmm.
ton. And the times that I have, like they've been I think Yolmi was the most fleshed out that I've seen because the Falcon that we had in the text-based game was the gal who had it. She used him as a lot more than that, and like there was a lot more with him between her and the GM.
Hmm.
Um, so, and I, like I said, I personally am not interested, so I never have. Um, so no, I don't think I have any more kind of thoughts around that. I think I got that answered.
Cool. Um, but yeah, that comes around to just I think something I wanted to point out, like with when Al was talking about familiars can just, are immortal, come right back. Yeah, there's a lot of creatures in D&D that are programmed in 5e. A lot of them also that Cobalt Press came up with, which I really like. They even pointed out like this familiar will bond to a creature with this type of morality and choices, and if they stray from that path, this familiar is gone. Familiars by
Mm.
choice I find extremely interesting and a really fun kind of, again, I keep talking about morality, but it's a fun way to kind of test and you know give players a mechanism for like reflection of their own moral dilemmas and what they decided to do. Like, say they do some, say maybe this familiar is like they're lawful good and they only hang out with people who like won't hurt the innocent, right? And they get drawn to a party member that they just kind of encounter, and the party member and this creature end up like successfully bonding in some way. And then maybe this party member has an opportunity to prevent some type of like innocent person getting hurt, and maybe they don't intervene when they could have easily. And then you can have that familiar, like whether it's verbal or nonverbal, maybe it just starts like shunning them or distant or like, oh, I want to call him over to feed him. Like, doesn't come.
No.
you
Yeah.
know, they go up in the tree. They don't want to talk to you. Um, And what's funny is like a lot of this you can just draw from Pokemon, especially like the first season, right?
Yes.
It's an amazing way, a great example of like how to RP creatures that are nonverbal to a player to give them like emotion, to kind of communicate like whether they're pleased or not. It, I really, it's a good tool if you wanna give some depth to nonverbal familiars. Um, yeah, I find that fun. Um, Something I want to go back on, unless somebody else has an idea they want to jump onto, is the kind of the fun and almost the issue around parties' power changing due to just action economy and, the issue with giving the party a high CR companion, right?
Yeah.
It's a common theme in games. A lot of GMs get around this by giving the party a baby or an egg or something, right? That they can maybe grow with the party. But like in the upcoming Heroes of Old campaign, I anticipate like,
No idea what you're talking about.
it's explicit goals of our party to find and tame and master beasts of the highest CR and size possible. So, Alu, you're gonna have the challenge that you had last time we played, or the time before last with Heroes of
I do
Old,
this
where
frequently.
yeah, we found a bunch of dinosaurs in the Upper Dark, and you're like, yeah, cool combat encounter. We're like, we're going to dominate the Alpha and take over this pack, and you're like, oh, sweet,
Tell me more.
yeah. And I mean, you made it challenging, but enough nat 20s in a row, you let us have it, right?
Yeah, it wasn't just gonna be like, no, nuh-uh.
And I mean, you could have, right? You definitely could have,
Well,
because it changes the
yeah.
game
It does,
I
mechanically.
might have.
Yeah.
but it
I'd
really
be like,
comes
yeah,
down to.
no.
I mean, it really comes down to what is the overall goal of your campaign? What's the goal of your game? Like, how serious is this? How rainy is the party? How vital is having like a very gritty, struggling to survive? Like, does that shift in power just break all the things that you were building towards or trying to do as a DM? Or is it like, I can work with this?
Yeah.
Players really want this? Sure, I'll let them have it. Like, I'll adjust a few things to make it work.
Yeah, like you're describing the scene like your party's alone, isolated, walking through the frosty forest. You hear a branch break in the distance. What do? I send my T-Rex in that direction.
Yeah, maybe not. Not that.
That's not it, Chief.
There's a different vibe when you have this big old meat tank or
Big old meat
or 15 raptors in the case of that season of Heroes of Old.
No, you're right. You're right.
We stopped slowing down. We were like, go Blitzkrieg, just through everything, and it was really fun.
Yeah, I was gonna say, y'all had a lot of fun with it.
It was really fun, and it did also allow you to crank the difficulty up extraordinarily.
It was kind of absurd.
Yep.
I'll do it again.
But it does definitely shift the kind of that fear as a player. It just naturally goes away when you are in a crowd or you have some big old monster with you that can handle most anything.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
I mean, it's a different fix, right? You're suddenly going from like enjoying that fear, that nervousness, that being on edge, hitting your stomach. Like, my character might die any moment because he got stabbed by that rusty blade, and we don't know if he's got sepsis or something. Like, versus like my character, we pushed and pushed, and things lined up, and now we are gods of our domain.
Yeah.
And that can be a lot of fun too.
I think it can. I guess.
So,
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, Joe. Go ahead.
that kind of reminds me of the campaign of Curse of Strahd that I ran with Two Hands a while back. Would a companion or a pet doesn't need to be a living thing?
Nope.
Because with Two Hands' character in that instance, they were pretty high leveled. Actually, sorry, a max leveled artificer. Who is
Oh.
capable of
That's a
casting the
different story.
fabricate spell. Yeah, that's a whole other story on how they're max level.
It's all
But
you, Joe.
so they were high enough level to cast fabricate, and slowly over time, they took a wagon and turned it into a double-decker bus with an explosive ballista bolt launcher on the top.
Yeah, as it should be.
And they, yeah, you want to talk about that a little bit, Two Hands?
Yeah. I think it's actually a really interesting parallel. It took me a second to follow where you were going with that, but I get it now, so I'll speak to that. So yeah, my character's name was Sony Tark.
Damn it.
So yeah, and we'll just lead in with that. And the only reason that I was that level is because, well, we found that deck of many things, and I happened to pull the wish card. And I'm like, "Can I be level 20?" And I was joking, and Joe's like, "Yeah, no, you're level 20 now." I'm like, "Oh wait, can I pick another wish?" And he's like, "No."
Your wish has been granted. Just fades
Exactly.
away.
It appears.
It's pretty funny.
Oh.
So yeah, so that's how I got there. But the character was obviously very inclined towards invention, creating things, and was pretty manic about it, just like how Iron Man is and how Tony Stark is. Ton of fun with it. And yeah, I started building this contraption. At first, it was from a misguided sense of necessity. Just, I want us to have a place where, we can lay low, where like the spies of Strahd can't see us, roof over our heads on the move type thing. And then it just like, what if it had guns? And like I got mage hand and like would pick up a ballista and be like, all right, we're gonna like contact weld this on there. It just got absurd. It was hilariously fun, right? And Joe did a good job of GMing and I would say adjudicating that with lots of rolls because it wasn't always a success, and I had a couple setbacks, and there was a time where I like forgot to do something and got like a whole team of horses killed in the process. So I was testing out like in rudimentary internal combustion or internal steam engine stuff. Like it got really awesome. I had a lot of fun with it, but like yeah, this vehicle, this tank became my baby. Truly became like the party pet. Like we rolled everywhere in on it. It was like our mount. It was our go-to, and it died after I did some bad things in it for a while. But basically, like Strahd showed up and was like, "Bro, you think you own the place?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah. I mean, I got a couple levels. It's like I was feeling spicy." And we all tussled. We tussled, and we were doing okay, and until we weren't. Yeah, so
Usually how it goes, yeah.
yeah, so we just charged the monstrous vehicle at Strahd in like this desperate attempt, but like we're gonna ram it, like we're gonna ram the tank, and there was this like this air of finality around it because we were so desperate, we were getting our shit pushed in, and Joe was just fucking with us. And Strahd just took it. He just fucking took it. And he's like, yeah, that was non-magical damage. Just like kind of shrugs it off and just proceeds to beat us with our spines. And yeah, it was pretty epic and pretty glorious. And I would say that was a pet death. It was a pretty traumatic pet death for Sony Tark. And yeah, I think that was cool. And I got to like RP on that as well, and just go through some grief and some loss, and try to like fixate on different things, like how can I get back at Strahd, and how can I move on from this, and maybe I should put my thoughts and my resources into other more magical means that maybe he'll be vulnerable to. And yeah, so that did change the game. And like the final fight was just this giant magic fight at the very top of his tower, with just epicness, just straight epicness. Um, I'll stop on the story time, but that's my thoughts on the whole pet thing. Doesn't have to be sentient. I think it can be symbolic.
My only question I have with that is, did you guys feel like Strahd killed your thing, or did you guys feel like you killed your thing? Or was it a
I
mix?
think I actually would feel like we killed the thing because like it was
Yeah.
desperation. Like it was us sicking our dog on the bear, hoping to live, and we did.
Yep.
But we killed our dog.
Yep. That's what I was kind of getting. I was like, that's almost a deeper feeling than just Strahd cutting it down, right? Before it hits him.
Yeah.
But watching your thing just splat and go away, right? But yeah, I mean, it sounds like that accomplished a lot of goals. Like I could see Joe again. Why you'd be motivated to have it? You gave two hands and probably the other characters a straight up hobby in the game to focus on for downtime and just a pivot of motivation. Like, we need to get stuff for our sweet bus. Let's go get some cool stuff for our sweet bus. Or, you kill a monster or take down some like faction. What do they have that we can attach to our bus? I could see that.
And we also got some cool interactions out of it too, because like the bigger and just more over the top it got, like the more disgruntled locals would get when we would just like roll into like the town on this like monstrous thing and like make a parking spot or like have to like pander for a parking spot.
Yep.
So yeah, it served to change and alter those NPC interactions, which is cool too. Props to Joe on that.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of falls into like why people in real life get pets, right? Like, it's a hobby, it's comfort, it's dependability, it's something to invest yourself in that usually is really rewarding and isn't going to like, you know, lash out at you or disappoint you most of the time. And the other thing that's interesting about, real life pets and pets in D&D is, they are typically shorter lived than player characters, right? And people. And yet people in real life, a lot of them get pets. I got pets. I've had too many pets. I have 2 dogs now. That's very reasonable. But I've had many, many, many creatures. And despite them dying, so many pets dying, I still want to have that be a part of my life, right? Some critter to connect with, to invest in. And I won't go too far down that road unless you guys have some words on it, but it's just interesting how you can take that same drive from real life and throw it into D&D as a motivation and comfort and means of just engagement, really.
I do think in narratives that character loss and character death makes for deeper storytelling. It increases the stakes, and yeah, it hurts, especially when it's either you or it's a character that you have grown to appreciate and love. But that I think that really drives purpose driven storytelling. Like that's the meat, that's the meat and potatoes of gripping stories that you remember. Like, oh gosh, like that was such a crazy fight, and Johnny died, but that's what made it so cool was that he gave up his life and that we won. So I feel like our favorite movies and our favorite characters end their story arc by dying for what they believe in, or failing to meet those goals in a really really wild way, or maybe a really tragic way. That's some of my favorite character arcs, the ones where the hero doesn't live at the end. So
I like those, and I don't know if it's always just vengeance, but the drive that can be found from wanting to, like, that loss can become a really strong motivation for a hero in a story or a group of player characters. Like I know a lot of GM tips. Like you want to get to a fire under your party's ass. Like either do this with an NPC they care about or have one of your players in on it and like set up some scenario where the person you want to pursue kills somebody they really care about in some way. Um I wish I remember the name of that video, but like I've seen that go really, really well. I've seen it also go really, really poorly. Like entire tables can just walk like this is dumb, I hate this, you know. But I think a lot of that comes up to expectations of like you should definitely tell your players if you're planning to give them some tragedy. This game will have tragedy. You will lose things that you will start to care about. That's going to be part of the game. You don't want to be like, yeah, this is super fun, blah blah, and yeah, Johnny's dead.
All right.
Good. That guy did it. You know. It could be really crushing for some, and it's unfortunate because, you know, I've had it totally bust before. Season 3 of Bane of the Ancient Site, I was building the party up, and there was this connection with this NPC, and I won't spoil how it works, but there was this bond forming with one player character and this NPC that was trapped in a horrible situation, and then come to find out that this person they've been bonding with has been dead this whole time. And then they know who did it. It's like this kind of, you know, the ghosty thing, right? Where you're like getting these hints, this guy's a bad guy, this happened. But it was too much for that player. And they imploded, I think, like as a person, partially triggered from the loss of this NPC that they'd been bonding with in downtime and in dreams. So there's a lot to consider there, not only about like expectations about the game in general, but also how's that player doing? I know you have an epic story, but are they really okay having this happen right now? Or maybe you should shelve it because you get people pretty invested into a D&D campaign and a storyline within it. And that's one thing I love about the hobby is just the depth of investment and intrigue and motivation and love and loss and hate that you can invoke of players and yourself as a GM. Like, I was pissed off at the guy who killed this girl. Go get him. You know, he's a dick, right? Get him, party. And I think everyone else in the game was really excited and like, oh my god. But all it takes is, you know, you don't want to push even one player over the line when they're not ready. So be careful with the power of loss.
Yeah, honestly.
Yeah. But no, I mean, critters, they're a really useful tool. You can do a lot of good stuff, a lot of damage. And I know that, you know, right
that's
now
went hand in hand for you.
Yes. I mean, like in Boda right now, you guys are, or at least a couple of you are like, we need to get a companion critter. I know, Alu, you're always motivated by that, right? And you know what I might do to
I'm
you
like,
with it.
all right, I'm playing a rogue, but can I be a beastmaster?
Right. And you know, like I've never had an issue mechanically with it. I have my own ways of balancing things, whether it's through the behavior of whatever you guys end up bonding with, or I just change the game. So like, well, it looks like you guys are going to be hiding behind your companion for the rest of this campaign, because if you don't, you're going to die. Like you could literally make a whole campaign out of the parties riding on the back of an adult dragon the whole rest of the game if you want. It would be really scary. But you could, right? Just Falcor to the rest of the game. But I forgot my point. I had a cool point. Oh yeah. So my question is for you, Alu. I have traumatized you multiple times.
Oh yeah,
in Bane of the Ancients using pets.
Want me to go down the list? Like, it's a long list.
You can if you want to. There's a couple that really stand out, right? But like, you still want to get more. You want to do it again.
Of course.
Why do you keep getting on the ride? You know what I mean?
Well,
you rode the roller coaster, you puked, and you're like, oh my god, give me 30 minutes. I'm gonna ride that roller coaster again. You know, like what's the draw?
Yeah, I guess the draw for me is, on one hand, it's pretty exhilarating. You know, you've got this life that you're taking care of. Like, that in and of itself is just so easily motivating. Like, you want to motivate my character? Like, piss their animal companion off. You want to interact with them? Have an NPC like, oh, hey, is that a wolf? You just have that in town? What you doing there?
Mm-hmm.
And why do I keep getting back on the ride? Well, I mean, I guess that'd be a similar answer to like, why do I keep playing D&D? You know, because we're making memorable moments. We're like, yeah, it can suck, and there can be moments of loss, and that can really, really be hard to kind of move past in the game. Like, you get really attached to something, especially with these longer campaigns. Like, you've been playing for years, you get really attached to either this NPC or, in this case, an animal companion, and then something happens to them. That really sucks. But it's great storytelling, and I hate you for it, but I love you for it.
Yeah.
and, and I hate that I love you for it. Um, so I guess that's my 2 cents. Like, you know, it's at the end of the day, it's a game, and it, it's just such a nice tool for storytelling because I like my aminals. They're meaningful to me. And I'm a big pet person myself in real life. So I'm like, how do I integrate this into the game in a way that, you know, I can enjoy even more so? Because I can't go out and own like a mountain lynx. Like that's not something I'm gonna do in my life.
That's not legal.
I can't do that. I mean, I could, but I'm not gonna.
There's big cat people, man, as we've all seen on Netflix now.
Yeah,
But
that's a lifestyle. So I'll get my fix. I'll get my fix through tabletop RPGs. Thank you.
You're like old and retired and just live on like a lynx farm.
Lynx Rescue. Alu's Lynx Rescue.
Sounds terrible.
Luna's Lynx. That's
You
hard to
also
say.
don't have to worry about being mauled to death by the animal that you own. Like,
It's true.
there's the suspension of disbelief there. Like, you get a lot of the good and some of the bad, all of which is memorable, and I love it. Like, I'm a huge fan of it.
To kind of tack onto that, like even though obviously I haven't experienced it myself, I think it's also like writing that fine line of like this is really believable and this is making me feel real things, but as Alice said, it's
Yeah.
also a game. And you know, under having that understanding that but is it a game? Is having that understanding that yeah, it's a game and
game.
ultimately this creature is not real. And even though it impacted you like very realistically and you know and sometimes I think even like good storytelling actually affects us on like a real level because it you know it shapes us, it molds us, it you know does a lot of things. And so I think like using animal companion, using pets and things like that, it rides a very fine line right there between you know this is very real but also not. So I think that probably is to your point, like why you keep getting back on is because it's still very much emotionally impactful for you, and you find satisfaction. I think honestly in that emotional impactness. Like I know that's how I am with good, satisfying stories. Is when they punch me in the face emotionally. I love it so much. I want it to happen again because it you know it was impactful. It made me remember something. Yeah, and like and it shaped me. And so I think and you have the opportunity to do that a lot with companions and with pets and all of that stuff we've been talking about. So
I wish Soren was here because I want to talk about when I killed his horse. But man.
excellent.
Pretty messed up, bud. But yeah.
Oh,
But yeah.
Is this like that one '80s movie? Like,
Never ending story.
yeah, Never Ending Story.
No,
Yeah.
it was worse.
Holy shit!
It wasn't.
Betray you.
Soren, I know you're going to hear this, so I'm going to just talk about it, and then you can talk about it later because I know you'll be on here at one
Talk
point.
about it.
We can work this out. But no, like
It's
from the
really good.
beginning of his character, he's playing this noble eldritch knight from a family that is of note, has some power in the region, and he has this white horse. It is his buddy, like straight out of what was that movie, Tangled, where he's like buddy with his dog. Like it
Yes.
was his buddy. He loved this horse. He would like, I'm gonna go on a dangerous thing. You stay here with this town folk. I'm gonna give them gold to take care of you. I'm gonna walk. Like he really, really tried to take care of this horse, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I
did.
like to set up a lot of chance for horrible things happening. There was a lot of things going on in the shadows in this particular town that was being controlled by a particular hag, and the party didn't know yet. But they were stepping on this hag's toes and messing with things, and she had a really nice setup. And then he sent his horse, like the horse was smart. It really was. He's like, all right, go back to the town, and we'll be back. And the horse never made it to town. But I did have that horse in the town at one point. It just wasn't in the form of a horse. So the hag turned the horse into two different people that were walking around in the town as spies. No one really recognized those people. But she cut the horse right, like not hot dog wise, it's hamburger style. So like so
Thank you for that very important clarification
so
that I didn't know I needed.
so this beautiful white noble horse, hot dog style, turned into two people alive in this state, being used as essentially this hag's two familiars. And like, you know, when they finally came back from their stint of hunting down these dragon poachers, they, you know, he's like looking for his horse. His horse isn't anywhere to be found. Eventually, through some more events, they get the whole town together. They finally find out this hag's there. They get the town leader involved, lock everybody inside this like meeting hall, and they're like, "All right, we're gonna get down to business." And through this whole epic speech, he's getting people riled up. There's kids like crying, like, "No, I didn't mean to play with the hag lady. Leave me alone." You know, everything. It's a very beautiful scene. Unfortunately, I think we messed up the audio on this. It was one of my favorite moments. But then he ended up specifying, like, who in here does somebody, like, who doesn't recognize who in here? And there was two people. And so they got him, like, isolated, and the people weren't talking. They were just observing. And they dispelled the magic. On these, they sensed detect magic. They were glowing. They dispelled the magic. And his horse went back to its original form in two pieces. And he had to be there while it died.
No!
Nice.
No!
Well,
After everybody got already so emotionally charged, it's really intense. Like accusing these kids of working with a witch. There's people in there, they don't know who's safe. The town leader's trying to get people to stay. There's folks wanting to fight, break out.
I bet everyone knew that was his horse too. Like,
And then this happens, and like, you know, there was some subtlety where I had like a few people like they knew, right? Because that's how hags are.
As you do.
But I mean, at that point, Soren's character Winter didn't give a shit. Like it was about his horse dying on the floor in the middle of this, and you know, it definitely, I think it created a hatred of all Fae for not just the character, also the party, and him as a person.
Yeah, that tracks.
I don't think he ever forgave Faye. Aldo, I think I infected you a bit with that too, because like going to there, like, I hate the Fae a bit, if I recall. But you worked through that. Yeah.
No, I
You
didn't.
go through your trauma.
I did. Just suspension of disbelief. I'm gonna pretend I don't hate your guts right now.
But like on one hand, that was a really messed up thing for me to do, right? But on the other hand, it was a super emotionally evocative. Like I remember all the players were stunned, like they were just in shock, and it wasn't like a "what's happening." It's just like, "What? No!" Like that horror, and I won't give you the images that come into my mind of things dying, but that horror that like something you love is just dying right there, and you had no control over it, but there's something you could have done to have stopped it if you hadn't have just left your horse and sent them back to town to find their own way.
Right.
And it's messed up, but you know,
Yeah.
I think it's drawing on my own trauma as a human with all the lives of critters that have been lost, and I know how powerful that can be.
Mhm.
And I know it's the most powerful when it's tied to an action a player took that led to that situation. It's way more powerful to do that versus the bad guy comes in and just cuts your horse in half. Like, that's lame. They're like, why? That's a dick move, you know? But if it's like, you know, like with Two Hands, you guys sent your bus at Strahd, and you guys probably felt way more than if Strahd had just sliced your bus in half, without you doing anything to you know, initiate that problem. Anyways, that was fun to chat about.
I'm gonna do a Rodinia plug on that. Like, even though it was unresolved, after the party like bumbled back into town, talked to the governor, got like a really basic quest, proceeded to turn that quest into a night of debauchery, and took a humble invite of, oh well, you know, while you're helping me out, you can, you know, you can sleep in one of my quarters at the mansion if you need to, and turn that into a, we're gonna party, and we're gonna bring a bunch of dwarves and a bunch of Svirfnebli that we met and some other people, and we're gonna just throw blast in this place. And the butler lets it happen. He's like, yeah, you know what? We're gonna talk about this later. But then, like, I feel that you guys, especially Joe, just those actions really nagged at you going forward, because then they stopped seeing the dwarves, they stopped seeing the Svirfnebli, and they came to find out that the butler's a super creepy, vindictive, powerful person that gave them the heebie-jeebies. And I feel like every session, Joe would ask at least once, "Where's the dwarves? Where's my buddies?"
It was pretty good.
Yep.
Yep.
You're like,
I think
in 2 days, maybe they're off shift.
Yep. It's that's
I think Silence was the only one that was asking, like, where's the dwarves? Where's the Zerfnebli? Where's the waterbenders? Like, what the hell?
It might be soup. We don't know.
It might be soup.
Jen just kept grimacing like,
Yeah.
probably not anything you need to go find. Probably just leave that as it is, buddy. It's keep going. But
Fine, it's fine.
it's probably fine. Just yeah. But yeah, that comes around to the kind of moral feedback that I love to use animal companions and just NPCs for. Again, that like, why is this happening? I don't know. You should probably figure it out. Why won't my dog look at me? You know,
It knows.
it knows what you did, man, and it's not gonna forgive you lightly, right? I mean, that one of the blah blah blah. I'm a big Drizzt fan. I like R.A. Salvatore's books. Like, I've done most all of them in the Forgotten Realms, but like in book 2, when Drizzt is kind of becoming a dickhead and more of a monster, and then Guinevere starts shunning him. He's like, no, that's my one thing that couldn't shun me. Like, this magical cat that I love. How could it not be like we're buds?
Yeah.
No words, just like just eyes, just like no.
You can do better than this.
Yeah, like
Cat
this,
judgment is the worst.
It is.
Like,
Not
damn.
wrong.
Can
Yep.
confirm.
just nah. You know they're right, probably. They're prideful, so they think they're right, regardless of whether they are. So it feels powerful.
Valid.
Pretty soon here, I think we should take a break. And then I know some of you wanted to or slash needed to go. I don't know how long. I mean, we could end it pretty soon here, or we could keep going a bit if folks want to keep hanging out and chatting. How are y'all doing energy wise?
Dandy on my end.
Got you two hands. You looking a little bleary.
I should be responsible and go to bed. I should. Like, I could stay up, and we probably could find some neater stuff to talk about. I will say that I think if we ended it here, we'd be ending on a solid note. So
Indeed.
that's one thing to consider.
Indeed.
And that's my vote for at least myself.
Joe? I think you're muted,
I
Joe.
have to get.
Oh, you're good. There you go.
I have to go to work in 2 hours and 40 minutes.
Yes.
Throwing that out there.
All right. Let's.
Just get in the car, continue the call, be like, "What's
Yeah,
it?"
yeah.
You know, I think let's kind of
Watch him
do
walk out.
let's do some little outro here. Call it early. This was thank you guys for doing this kind of impromptu, short notice pilot test of the podcast setup, and I had a lot of fun with it.
It was a lot of fun.
I hope we can keep this going. My hope is once or twice a week with different mixes of people's schedules. You know, I'll throw together like, who wants to chat? Let's go, and see how that goes. Any last thoughts before we kind of say goodnight to folks who tuned in about critters? Cool,
Nothing
cool.
off the top for me.
All right. Well, I'll start with the outros again because I did it before, even though it's not alphabetical at all. So yeah, thank you anyone and everyone for listening to us yammer about pets and critters and D&D. There's of course a lot more stuff we could get in depth and gritty about. But I had a lot of fun just kind of touching on the topic. Again, I'm Gat. I'm the game master for Bane of the Ancients D&D, which we live stream every Saturday at 6 p.m. PST. I think that's when we do it.
Right.
Yes. It's hard for me to even remember all the time zones involved. I'll put a link in the description below and in the About section if you want to see what me GMing looks like. And yeah, this is the Doglin Tales podcast. We plan to touch on a bunch of D&D topics, go in depth in some things, lighter depth in others. Hoping to do this once or twice a week. Yeah, who else wants to say goodnight?
I'd say goodnight, being alphabetically the first.
There you go.
Hello, everyone. I go by Aludre Luna. It's been a pleasure. I really enjoy talking about pets. Pet guy. Thanks for tuning in. Don't necessarily have anything to plug at this point, but who knows what the future will bring.
Plug Here's Old again.
You know what? I'll plug Heroes of Old again. Tomorrow at about...
Which is Friday.
Which is Friday. Every Friday. I believe we're going for 6 p.m. PST or 9 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be streaming Heroes of Old, which is a much more lighthearted campaign than Bane of the Ancients, and overall, it's just a good time. Gotta get it together and unite the tribe, so to speak.
Although we will
Yeah.
sometimes be on different days. Sometimes.
Like Tuesdays,
Yeah.
or Wednesdays, or...
If you tune into Heroes of Old, we'll make sure you know when it's happening. But it'll be 6 p.m. PST as well during the week, not on my
Got some
Saturday.
consistency. I mean...
That's right.
Alright, man.
Once again, I am Charlotte. I had a good time talking tonight, even though I don't know that I really had much to put forth because and companions is not something I deal with usually, but it was fun.
Now you know.
And yes, Now I know.
That's the
You know the
battle.
pain.
G.I. Joe.
And I have nothing to plug except that I am a player in Bane of the Ancients. So
Hey.
Alright, I'm Joe. Yeah. Thanks for joining us. And if somehow you're listening to this and don't know what Bane of the Ancients is, how did you get here?
How did you get here?
Uh,
Good.
go find out what Bane of the Ancients is. Go check us out.
Yeah. And
That's
tune
it.
into
That's all I
Heroes of
got.
Old because it's going to be
Yes.
fun.
And Heroes of Old. Yes.
Yeah,
So excited.
I feel bad for Alu, but I'm also really jealous of Aludria because I'm like, I can't have two hands
Say
playing
it.
my game because I can only GM on Saturdays. It's BS because that's the way the world works. But Joe, they found
Someday,
it
guys.
because they're just huge fans of Doglin Gaming. That's which
indeed.
you know everybody's a fan.
Yes.
Everybody knows.
Yeah.
I'll plug Heroes of Old. Alu's doing some pretty nice things to accommodate my awkward schedule for consistent D&D. So definitely is a solid that you're doing for me. So thanks on that. That lets me play a little bit more in Heroes of Old. And two hands. It's been 46 minutes since I was last sideways, but I'm better now. And yeah, you guys know what my role in the group is. This the peanut gallery, and I'm here for more.
Force of chaos.
Awesome.
Yep, watch Heroes of Old, watch Bane of the Ancients.
If you like us, you like some D&D live play for sure. All right, now comes
I
the
hate watches too. That's fine.
yeah, dude. If you want to come in and like just yell at us via text the whole time, I would be so amused. Come tell us. Give me feedback live while GMing. Tell the players what they're doing wrong. Do it.
Your beard's weird.
Your beard's weird. Oh no.
No.
Do it.
This ruling's wrong.
Constructive feedback, guys.
Deconstructive. The anti-life.
Hope.
Hope. Yes. All right. Well, thanks everybody. Till next time, and I'm gonna start turning off these streams.